Here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome in, folks. I'm joined today by my old friend Rudi Fronk, who is the co-founder, chairman, and CEO, and chief cook and bottle washer, and all the rest. It's at the Seabridge Gold. How you doing, Rudi?
Chris, I'm doing great and Happy New Year to you.
And belated Happy New Year to you too. We've been trying to get together, and finally it worked out today to wrap up a few of the pivotal things that we ended 2025 with, and look ahead to the near term in early 2026. And of course, we're going to start with the big elephant in the room, which is KSM. You announced in your, and I'll have a link to this, folks, along with the notes of this video or videos, because we'll probably have it in a couple of pieces, your year-end letter where you talked about going from three serious contenders for your project partner at KSM down to now your one preferred partner. And wasn't announced at the end of the year, but that's still looming by the sound of things in a fairly near term. So tell us what the last steps are, Rudi, for that partner before you have the actual announcement.
A great question, a question I get all the time. If it didn't happen last year, when's it going to happen and what still needs to be done? Yeah, so clearly we have made tremendous progress on the joint venture discussions. As you said, Chris, we've narrowed it down from 3 to 1. We are now advancing with our partner of choice. And our partner of choice is one that checks a lot of boxes for us: technical capabilities, financial capabilities, and also the ability to step in and in terms of the social licensing with our Indigenous partners. The next big step for KSM is to complete that final feasibility study. And we want to make sure that we're in alignment with our partner on what will go into that study. You don't want to do a feasibility study only to find out 2 or 3 months into it that your partner may want to have done it a different way. So we are now really focused down with our partner to make sure that we're 100% aligned. So when we press the button on feasibility studies, which we expect to do soon, that we're doing it in alignment.
Well, and certainly if they're going to be writing some of the bigger checks going forward, they got to pass, things have to pass muster with them.
Absolutely.
Well, what's really exciting, and this of course has been this for a long time, and you've gotten a lot of questions I know over time, is when is it going to be? When is it going to be? But among other things, you probably in relative terms, even though your share price tripled in 2025 with a lot big assist from the gold price, so congratulations on that. But I would argue and have argued that you would have done far better than that uh, if you had already announced a partner. And my suspicion and my own opinion is that, and if you look at the old Lassonde curve, which a lot of people have heard about, one of the main points in the life cycle of any project where you get a big re-rating is when development becomes a certainty. And when you realize, oh boy, after all the talk, all the resources, gee, this thing is really going to be a mine. And so I'm expecting, all else being equal, to see that happen for you, because I think you have been punished in the market. Again, notwithstanding a great 2025, I think you have been punished in the market for not having that out yet.
Yeah, look, I own that. I've been talking about a joint venture for a number of years. It hasn't happened yet. Therefore, there's definitely some skepticism whether it's going to happen. I do know, Chris, there's a lot of people on the sidelines waiting for it to happen.
Yep.
I've had meetings with large institutions. I love your story. I get it. You're undervalued. I'll buy your stock when the partnership's announced. Fine. You'd probably be paying more then, but that's okay by me.
Well, and a lot of them too, their attitude basically is that they would rather have a couple of the risks out of the way, and they'll happily pay up. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens and how quickly everybody jumps on board once that news does come out. So we'll obviously be eagerly awaiting that. I want to also talk about more of a transaction that is, mathematically, I think, going to unlock a lot more value for you. This is something that you also talked about for a while, and at the end of last year announced that you are going to spin out your next biggest asset, Courageous Lake, in the Northwest Territories. And that's a project that, again, and you and I have talked about this many times, you mentioned this as well late last year, that the market has treated this almost as if it doesn't exist on your assets, and yet you've got 11 million ounces measured, indicated. Almost 3 million of that is proven and probable reserves, and an open pitable project that starts at 2.5 grams a ton or something like that, which is a huge grade for an open pit project. I think one of the knocks against it over time and I'll let you explain more about that as the more remote nature of that. But as time has gone on, whether you look at the Yukon now, especially Northwest Territories coming, Nunavut, toward to the east, nothing's all that remote anymore as more and more resources are being developed.
No, for sure. People forget that before we did any work on KSM in the early stages of the company, we bought Courageous Lake, we did some drilling, we grew the resources, and we did a pre-feasibility study on it early in our company timeline. And at one point in time, Courageous Lake generated a market cap to our shareholders on its own of $500 million US. When I look at our stock today, I don't think there's any value in our stock because of Courageous Lake, because it sits in the shadow of KSM, and that's what everybody's focusing on. So it's been frustrating to me as the CEO of this company that here we have an asset that obviously is worth more than zero in the marketplace, and we're not getting that as shareholders. So we came to the conclusion that the best way to get the value directly to our shareholders is spin this out in its own separate public company. As a Seabridge shareholder, you're going to get a dividend of a share or some ratio of your shares you own in Seabridge in this new company called Valor Gold, which will be publicly traded to give you immediately value for that asset.
Now, when you spin that out, and what is the approximate, if you can give us an idea, time frame that you're looking to get this done in?
We'll have an announcement out on this in the next week or so in terms of the
Okay.
expectation and timeline and all the work we've already done. But our expectation is that we're looking to have this done by mid-year.
Okay. And so Seabridge shareholders today will own a piece of this. The Seabridge will still own some too, correct?
Actually, no, we're going to do
Oh, you
100%
won't.
of
Okay.
this to our shareholders. What we'd like to do, though, is we're going to put some cash into the spin out to
Right.
make sure it has some runway. And then we'd look to perhaps have a stream on production that comes from that at a very, very high gold price.
Okay, cool. And where do you think you're going to have this listed when it does come out?
Toronto Stock Exchange for sure. That's
Okay.
simple because that's our main listing in terms of being a Canadian
Right.
company. But then also we will get a listing in the US as well for ease for those holders that don't trade in Canada, having a US listing.
Super. What's a good takeaway that you can give people about how good this asset really is that no one's paid enough attention to, Rudy?
Oh, that's easy, Chris. So we did an updated pre-fees in January of 2024.
Right.
We used 1850 gold price at that point in time. The NPV on that asset was about $500 million US. Okay. I understand you're not going to get 100% of your NPV in the marketplace, but other development stage companies get 30 to 40 to even 50% of their NAV in a market price. At today's gold prices, that NPV at 1850 of $500 million jumps to over $3 billion. So, and again, if we're not getting anything in our share price today, let this company asset go out on its own and its own separate company, and let's see what the market values it at. I'm excited to see that myself. I own a
Sure.
lot of shares of Seabridge, and getting shares of Valor Gold to see what the market ascribes in terms of a value will be kind of a lot of fun.
And lastly on this, for the moment at least, Rudy, besides seeding it with some money to get off the ground a little bit, what are you looking at as far as a desired management is concerned? What kind of overlap is there going to be, at least initially?
Yeah. I promised my board that this company will be completely run by a different management team, not
Okay.
that we're taking assets away from KSM and Seabridge. So we will have a senior executive team, a board of directors, independent of Seabridge.
Okay. But you'll have some say in vetting some of these people, I would suspect.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that as well. Finally, I want to wrap up with the big exploration news that you had as 2025 came to a close, and that was at Snip North, which suggested more so than prior, but you've been building up results like this over a period of time that Iskut altogether could be a similar story to KSM, that you could be sitting on one or more really large porphyries. So tell us a little bit about those numbers that you put out in December.
Yes, we bought Iskut in 2016 at a pretty depressed gold price with the thought and view that it could be another KSM. So over the past few years, we've been kicking the tires, assessing what the opportunities are. And last year, we honed in on a large area called Snip North, where we drilled 24,000 meters. And I think each of the holes that we drilled there intersected hundreds of meters of continuous mineralization of gold and copper. We now have enough drilling there to come up with a maiden resource estimate. We expect to have that resource estimate completed by the end of the first quarter, so in the next 2.5 months. And we expect it to be a big, big number. Remember, at KSM, we have 5 deposits there, two of which are 2 billion tons or more. We think that Snip North has the potential to be that big. We have not yet found the limits of this deposit, but have enough data to go out and do an initial mineral resource estimate on the data we do have.
And the grades, especially what you came out with in December, those grades, at least, and they're not going to be necessarily exactly this in a resource estimate, but you had some grades that, in more respects than not, are a bit higher than the reserve at KSM, don't you?
Yeah, a couple of the selected holes that we announced had grades better than KSM over. I think one of the holes was over 800 meters of continuous length of good gold and copper grades above our reserve grades at KSM.
Right.
Yeah, so we're excited about this. And again, we think that there's more of these.
Mhm.
So we're going to have a program in 2026 that'll continue to find the limits of the Snip North deposit while we continue to take that knowledge base and try to find other deposits similar to what we have at Snip North.
Good stuff. But meanwhile, you're going to have that initial maiden resource estimate out by the end of Q1, but you're going to still keep drilling it.
Correct.
Good. I'm looking forward to that too as the year goes on. So you got three big reasons why, and your overall market cap right now. Of course, we're doing this on the 19th, so the market's closed in the U.S. But I see you're up another couple percent today in Canada. But your U.S. what, about 4 billion market cap now?
Well, just over 3 billion, I
A
believe.
little
We have
over
just
3
over
billion.
100 million shares outstanding and a $30 share price.
Okay, so with that market cap, you've got two premier assets, KSM and Courageous Lake, about to be spun out. And especially with as much as gold has gone up, I still tend to think, and I said this before, where KSM is concerned, that you're still not getting remotely the value that these things are actually worth. And
Yeah,
so,
so here's some other numbers on KSM.
yeah,
So we did the pre-fees in 2022. We
right.
used 1742 gold and 353 copper. And that pre-fees came up with an NPV after tax of about $8 billion US, okay, and an IRR of 16%.
Mhm.
If you take today's metal prices and plug those into that model, you're looking at an NPV north of 30 billion, 8 billion to over 30 billion, and an IRR that essentially doubles from 16% to over 30%.
Wow.
What's interesting to me is, yeah, we had a decent year last year in terms of our share price performance, but relative to the improvement in our assets as a result of the higher gold prices, we have not yet captured any of that or very little of that value in our share price. And I do believe that announcement of a partnership will lead to that.
Well, again, like I showed earlier, the Lassonde curve, that alone, that announcement of a partner and the certainty now of development, moving up is, I think, going to be a big attention getter and get some people on board. But yeah, I mean, your share price was higher at the peak in 2011 than it is today, and without remotely the progress that's been made, let alone at a price even for gold back then at its brief peak that was way less than half of what it is right now. And I'm sure you agree with me that going forward, you can't. I mean, you can make the case, and I do, that near term we could see some turmoil in the markets that would cause a rush for liquidity, might take some of the steam out of gold, at least for a while, if everybody had to scramble to get liquid. But by and large, with everything going on in the world, I mean, this secular bull market I don't see any end to it. Because all the factors that have led to it are still here, let alone, between President Trump and all the geopolitical stuff, picking a fight with the Fed. Um, you know, you can't be bearish gold in that environment.
No, we remain to be bullish. Yeah, there could be obviously some pullbacks that might actually be healthy a bit here to shake the
Mhm.
trees. But we're out on record. If you look at our website and look at the case for gold, which we do
Yep.
updates from time to time, the co-founder of the company, Jim Anthony, and I put out a recent forecast that in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see $13,000 gold, and nothing has changed our viewpoint on that. If you think $5,000 gold is exciting, wait till you see gold at 5 digits.
That'll be something else. And I think the only question is timing is not if we get to that point, but when. So,
Agreed.
Rudi, great stuff. I look forward to seeing you hopefully later in the winter, and certainly even if it's remotely like this, when some of these pieces of news come out, we'll definitely have you back. So, thanks much for the update, and we'll see you soon.
Always a pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
Take care.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.